Hello, noble people. My name is Noble, and in this video, we are going to be ranking your guys' Deltarune theories. I asked you guys what was some of your best Deltarune theories. I didn't get that many this time, considering this is the sequel to the first time I did this. I wasn't expecting there to be that many, but I figured why not try and hop in and do this again, try and do something Deltarune related. If you know what's been going on with the channel, it's been kind of weird with how YouTube is right now. Originally, I just thought maybe I needed to try and jump to like a different franchise with Pokemon or whatnot, but it's just YouTube being finicky with how stuff is, so I figured why not try something Deltarune related. I'm also going to be doing another Deltarune meme review. I, however, kind of want to try and do a Google Doc where I will allow you guys to submit your own Deltarune memes into it. However, I don't really know how I would do that, so if you guys have any ideas for that, please leave it in the comments down below. Without further ado, let's get into these theories. The first group is a bunch of night theories, with the Papyrus Knight actually makes sense. Azrael is the potential knight, but they didn't elaborate. And then the vessel that you make at the start is actually the knight, which I kind of feel like it's a little weird that we're still kind of having discussions with the knight, considering it is most likely Des or someone from the Holiday family. I do understand Azrael a little bit, considering Azrael might have horns and the knight's design has horns. But I'm a little thrown off because they don't really elaborate. Even the person who said Azrael is like, oh, sorry, I can't elaborate, I gotta go right now. Which makes me feel like that people are just kind of being jokey. But I do think that if the knight is someone who we're not expecting, that would be interesting. The thing is Toby really isn't like a Scott Cawthon where it's like, haha, it was this secret thing all along that you would have never guessed unless you poured millions of hours into the like code or whatever. That's not really the thing. Des has been an ongoing character and has been like briefly mentioned. Like Des had like a couple mentions in chapter 1, chapter 2 had a bigger role, and then obviously in chapter 3 and 4 has like huge segments. Like, people who play the game can't just not acknowledge Des for the entirety of the chapter 4 house or chapter 4 Noel's house. Like, that entire section just rings Des is involved with this somehow. And even though, yes, it is predictable to say Des is the knight, you also have to keep in mind that this is going to be a completed game from start to finish. So once we get chapter 7, people are going to buy this game and play through chapter 1s all the way to chapter 7. So that will be a big reveal for people who haven't been in the fandom. So I think it's kind of underwhelming to just say, oh, it's the vessel because we don't know anything about the vessel, or it's Papyrus because I like Papyrus. I feel like that's a little underwhelming. We will be going to multiple Dark Worlds in chapter 5. Now, this is interesting. Now, do I think we will be going to multiple Dark Worlds? Probably not, simply because there's no real evidence that we are going to be going to multiple Dark Worlds. I feel like there is 100% a case that we could. I mean, chapter 4, we literally went to 3 Dark Worlds. The one, first, second, and third Sanctuary. And Susie makes one of the Dark Worlds. There is 100,000,000% a chance that a different character opens a different Dark World. But a lot of stuff points to most likely the Flower Shop being a Dark World. And knowing the story and stuff that could be portrayed in chapter 5, and with Toby kind of hinting that chapter 5 is going to be kind of, it's not going to be as big as chapter 4, which chapter 4 is huge, so that's understandable. But the case of it is chapter 5 is most likely going to be decently sized. It's going to be decently big. So the fact that we might only get one Dark World, or we might get multiple, I could see it. The only question I have is what the Dark World would be. In chapter 4, you got around it because there's the lobby area of the church, then you have Susie making one, and then you have the actual main big Dark World for the third Sanctuary. They got away with that in having it all in the same location. With chapter 5, there really isn't too many locations in the actual flower shop, if we're going based off flower shop. And even if it's a different location, like, I don't think the hospital rooms would really change what stuff is going on. I could see a way where the front half of the flower shop is the first Dark World, and then we go into the later half. But the thing that is different with that is there's no doors in Flower Shop that I remember. They're just open. So we'll have to wait and see. But I feel like it could be interesting, especially with Festival, and maybe we could open up Hometown more. Maybe there's another location that could be stuff. I think this is really interesting to think about. The Holiday Home is Chapter 6 Dark Fountain, hence why we even go in, and there's an actual fleshed out interior. This is really big, and I do kind of agree with this. One thing that I had in like my bingo card when guessing what stuff was going to happen is, I don't necessarily want it to happen, but I feel like it is going to happen. I think Rudy is going to die. That is just a thing that I think is going to happen. While he was standing up and out and about in Chapter 4, he is visibly really tired after church in Chapter 4. And it makes me feel like that he isn't getting any better, and that it might be a case that he dies. We know from the Undertale alarm clock that got scrapped, we saw different dialogue stuff, and Asgore does talk about a Rudy from Undertale, and he fell down and died in that alarm clock scenario, and obviously that's not canon to necessarily Deltarune. But the fact of it is that a different version of Rudy is dead. So we kinda have to go on an assumption that Rudy might not make it all the way through. And I can 100% see a situation where Rudy dies maybe at the end of Chapter 5, beginning of Chapter 6, something. And then Noel spirals and makes a Dark Fountain. I could 100% see that, especially with the cliffhanger that we get with the weird route, that Noel will most likely, at least in the weird route, Noel will most likely be a big part of Chapter 5 somehow. So maybe she'll be a big part of Chapter 5 normally, meaning that she will know the Dark Worlds are real and might make one to try and escape, or possibly Susie talks about how Gerson got revived, and Noel tries to stab the earth and try to bring back Rudy. And I think that could be really good storytelling. A bit of a longer one, so I'll summarize. Basically, Gerson implies that the different retellings of Lord of the Hammer are based off the prophecy, and obviously the prophecy is what Deltarune in the story we are playing. So the terrible weapons and the hammer we get means that possibly the shadow crystals and the smith that was able to make the pure crystal means that possibly the real route, or the true prophecy route, is the weird route. Which actually is kind of interesting. However, I feel like it's so explicitly told to us that it isn't the normal path we're supposed to take. In Chapter 3, it specifically states in the Shadow Mental mini-game that this is the Forbidden Path. The Forbidden Path began with ice magic, and with Deltarune, you can't really change the narrative like you can with Undertale. Obviously, the choices you don't matter thing from Chapter 1, but, like, that is a thing. Whatever you do in Chapter 1, like, doesn't really affect Chapter 2, because everyone gets recruited from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2. Chapter 2 does matter for Chapter 3, and Chapter 3 and 4 do matter. But at the end of the day, Chapter 3, if you don't recruit everyone, it doesn't really have a lasting impact. Sure, you miss out on recruits, but it's not that big deal. With Chapter 3 and 4, Tenna will die if you don't recruit everyone, and then Jack and Stein will die if you don't recruit everyone. But the fact that Snowgrave, or the weird route, are specifically stated as the Forbidden Path, and it's drastically different, not like just one character is dead, and the, like, even though Tenna is dead, you still continue into Chapter 4 like nothing happened. with the case of the weird route drastically changes. Like, if you go to do chapter 2, do the weird route, chapter 3 will stay the same. There's like a couple lines changed, but chapter 4 drastically changes. So I don't really know if that's prophesized, especially because Rousey has specific dialogue in the weird route that makes you think that he doesn't want this going on and he doesn't think that's the correct choice. And I feel like if it is the more prophesized route, that would actually have been in the prophecies in chapter 4. A really big one to end us off. This person believes Kris is a prototype vessel made by Gaster. They explain different evidence points of the copies are monochromed. Kris has colored them with love. What Tana's saying, why do you taught to laugh and cry? The soul cage flavor text, a bunch of different stuff. But I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like this takes away from Kris's character a decent amount. Now, I'm not saying that this is thought out. I actually like that someone actually gave a really constructed and thought out evidence points. However, from a writing perspective, I feel like this would not be something that Toby would do necessarily. There are a lot of stuff, and especially with the eggs, I feel like you do have like a very big evidence point with how the eggs, the gray smudge, the fact that like the copies are monochrome. There is 100% stuff to showcase that there's something going on with Kris. But I do feel like in terms of writing, just having it be just like, oh yeah, Kris is just like a random vessel, I feel like it is kind of It could 100% be played up like there isn't really an explanation of why Kris is the only human in a hometown. That 100% could be explained. One thing that I think would explain something is if they were to introduce Kara or Frisk. I don't know if Frisk would necessarily, but more and more I feel like if they were to introduce Kara and explain more that it just happens to be the case that there are not humans necessarily in a hometown, might explain stuff. I will say, for the evidence that we have right now, it isn't necessarily a bad theory, but I do kind of I kind of overlook theories, or just kind of like, when it comes to theories that are just like, oh yeah, it has to do something with Gaster. I don't necessarily think Kris has to do 100% something with Gaster. It's probably Gaster-esque, but I don't just think it's just like, hey, yeah, Gaster is like fully the mastermind. I still feel like Gaster is a meta-narrative character, not necessarily like a main villain that we will see, but I could be proved wrong, and I think that this is probably the best written out theory that we've seen all of them in this video. And that is going to be it for this video specifically. I had a lot of fun doing these. Again, we didn't get as many, but I tried to explain them more than last time. Last time I just kind of rapid fired them, and I'm very happy about this. Hopefully you guys will want to see more of this. Like I said, I am going to do another like meme reaction video, but I want to try and set up a Google Doc. I might wait to do that a little bit. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, if you have thoughts on any videos that I should make in the future, please leave them down below. But that's going to be all for now. Stay noble. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.